Hi, my name is Luna Stone and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be telling you all about the books that I read in March. There are quite a lot of different books that I read. I think I read 8 in total, and I've made a few different pointers as to what I'd like to talk about in each review. I am getting better at this, I promise. I thought during March that I would start reading a fantasy book that everyone was crazy about, and I'm super glad that I made that decision. This book I have previously fully reviewed on my channel, so if you'd like to know what I think of it in depth, whereas this is pointers, I did speak about it fully in that review, then go ahead and look at that. So the first book that I read in March was Fourth Wing. I honestly loved it. It swept me away. It was such a change to the usual books that I read. Because I'm solely a sort of contemporary romance, romantic comedy, that sort of reader, I have not really delved into the world of fantasy. I've read books like One Dark Window, Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig, but other than that, I'm not a huge fantasy person. I find that they are quite heavy on your brain and it's just quite a lot to take in. So I guess I just read books that are kind of simpler to manage, because I find with fantasy that there is a lot of depth to them. There's a lot more characters, there's the whole lore that you need to learn, because it's basically a whole world that the author has created. But I was hooked from the very beginning with this book. It follows a character who essentially has a chronic illness, and she has been drafted into the Riders Quadrant to basically fight for her city, and you follow her journey through this quadrant within the college that she goes to. There are dragons, there are magical people, there are magic wielders, there are griffins, and it's overall extremely good. I gave this 5 stars because, as I said, it swept me away. From the first chapter I was like, okay, I don't want to be a cowgirl anymore, I want to be a dragon rider. And for me, that shows me it's something. So yeah, Rebecca Yarros did an incredible job. I did expect there to be a lot more spice from the reviews that I've read, but I gave this 3 spice chili peppers, and I said it was kind of Scotch bonnet level. It was like the sex scenes and the tension were described with a few smutty words, but it wasn't as much as I thought it would be. And I'm quite a spicy reader, like I read a lot of spice at different levels, and I don't think this is as spicy as some of the books that I've read. So yeah, I don't want to go into too much detail because I've got my full review already on YouTube. I will pop the link below. But this is the first book I read in March, gave it 5 stars, and I absolutely loved it. I do, however, not want to read the others because it's just a bit too much for me. The second book that I read in March is Spiral by Bal Khabra. This is a sprayed edge book and is a exclusive edition from The Works. I read this, I think, let me have a quick look. It took me 3 days to read this. I read it on both paperback and I also got it on my Kindle Unlimited because I wanted to read it in bed. I think that just goes to show, like, I literally could not put this book down. It was just so lovely, it was entertaining, it was gripping. There was a lot of depth to it. The characters both have their own struggles, and I think it was just lovely to see such relatable issues come up in this book. The issues that you can relate to as a person. You're not just reading this fairy tale, you're reading a story about 2 people who could very well just be your next door neighbour, could be your friend, your colleague from work. And that's what I love about this. It's 2 characters with real life issues and real life struggles who have had, I suppose, quite adverse experiences, and they make the most of their life situation. And I really love it. It's really sweet. It's a bit spicy. I gave this a Scotch bonnet as well, so I gave this about the same spice as Fourth Wing. I gave it 3 chili peppers. It had some spicy scenes, but it wasn't too spicy, it wasn't too open door. I said in my notes that the 2 characters are incredible separately as 2 separate entities, and then they're just so lovable as a couple, and it had me rooting for them from the very beginning. I just love the whole character development, the themes that you can relate to, and also just how emotive the story is as well. I found that I got emotional quite a lot through this book, and there was a lot of sort of roller coaster kind of scenes where one minute you were high on happiness and the next you were down in the trenches with these guys because of a sad situation. This is a slow burn, and I adore slow burns. I'm the kind of person that when they just sort of get together straight away, or they get into the spice straight away, I'm kind of like, oh. So I love it when the tension is built, the anticipation's there, and then when it finally happens, you're like, oh my gosh, like, this was so worth the wait. I love the ending of this. It is like the perfectly imperfect happily ever after, because it's like, it's quite realistic, but it's also the kind of happily ever after that you want for yourself. It's really sweet, it's really lovely, but it doesn't just happen. Like, work has gone into making this happily ever after happen, and there's this extra addition, like this extra depth that you get when you're finishing it up. Like, I won't say it, but there's something that happens and it's just really lovely, and it kind of adds up and translates. So the bits that you find out about these two characters through the story, when you get to the end and this thing happens, it kind of brings it full circle because of their experiences and then what they do when they get together. It brings the whole thing full circle, and it was just so lovely. So overall, absolutely love this. I gave it 4 stars. At the time I gave it 4 stars because I suppose just comparing it to other books that I've read, it was just 4 stars in my opinion. But it's not to say that this is not a wonderful book. I absolutely loved it. I even made I put a few little tabs in there and highlighted a few of lovely quotes that I liked. So yeah, overall Spiral was fab. So the third book that I read it on Kindle, so I'm going to pop the image here. It is That Kind of Guy by Stephanie Archer. This book took me about 11 days to read because I did take quite a large break in between, as for some reason I just wasn't feeling the storyline. Like, I've read other Stephanie Archer books and I felt like a connection with them. I think it was the Vancouver Storm series that I absolutely adored, and I think going from that and then reading this, the Queen's Cove series, it just wasn't connecting with me. It was still a really good book and I read it all the way through, but it just wasn't there for me. It just didn't connect with who I am, and therefore I gave it 3 stars. Still a very good book, just not one that I went through really easily. I just struggled a little bit with it. It was not as enjoyable as the Vancouver Storm series, but I think for other people who perhaps prefer that type of storyline, might prefer it to a sports romance. So this is the thing, just because one person doesn't quite connect with a book doesn't mean that it's not good. It just means that perhaps you're just there with a different storyline. I said in my notes that I liked the characters as individuals and I really loved their rapport when they were together, and I loved the anticipation of the build up into the spice, but the characters for some reason just didn't connect with me. But the ending overall was very sweet, very wholesome, and I am really glad that I stuck it out. I'm glad that I didn't not finish it. Also, I gave this Scotch bonnet as well 3 peppers. It was quite spicy when you got to it, and I was living for that. I love Stephanie Archer's spice. The 4th book that I read, I was very unsure about whether I wanted to talk about this book and whether I wanted to post anything about it at all, because I've heard some speculation about the author and some very questionable things, and whilst I am aware that a lot of people can say things and there's rumours that happen, I just, as an author myself, I want to protect my name, and I want to make sure that I'm not doing anything that puts me in the bracket of judgment from people, because I like to think that I am very respectful, I'm a good person, and yeah, I've just heard some things about this author. However, I'm fully aware that there are a lot of questionable things that authors do. Not every author, but some authors out there, and the same with actors and singers, and it doesn't mean that their works still can't be critiqued. I found out things about the author after I bought the book, so I wasn't actively trying to support the author. I just had this book and I finally decided to read it, and only then I found out about certain things. But I'm going to shut up about that. The book is a very anticipated read, one that has been ridiculously famous, and it's ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses. Now, everything about the author aside, this is what I thought of the book before I found anything else out. It's completely unbiased. The only biased thing I'll say is there was so much hype around this book that I expected huge things from it, and unfortunately I did not get that. I didn't feel what the hype was saying. I know that people have said that the second book is better, but as a first book in the series, I would have expected a lot more from this. I would never expect the rest of the series to carry the weight that the first book couldn't. So this took me about 6 days to read. I read the paperback. I found it entertaining to an extent, but I felt that a lot of the themes and overall main happenings in the book didn't make sense. A lot of things are like left open, and they're just, in my opinion, aren't very well done. It's like things happen and then the author didn't know how to make those things better, so they just pulled some random laws of the universe sort of out of nowhere to neutralise the issue. And whilst I'm aware that that is a lot of stuff in fantasy, it was just the way it was done. It didn't feel like it made much sense to me, and there was a lot of things that were left open. Whilst the characters were interesting, there wasn't really any real depth to them for me. I didn't feel connected to the characters, and the development just didn't feel like it was there. And the relationship between the two main characters, I just thought there could have been so much more done with it. I felt like it didn't really grow, didn't really have that anticipation and the tension. And I also read the plot of the rest of the series and found out that in a way their relationship in this book didn't matter at all. And everything that happens in this book is about the relationship between Tamlin and Feyre. And literally reading the rest of the summary of the series, it kind of means this book is just disregarded. It kind of means that this book just doesn't matter. And that was quite disappointing to find out, because I was rooting for these two, but I just didn't feel like that development and growth was there. Like, this book could have just been a bit of a background in the second book, just to set up the universe, and like, I don't know, perhaps like the history of what happened could have been there, but the fact that we've become sort of attached to the characters and then it kind of feels like their story doesn't matter. Again, I'm new with fantasy. I don't really read fantasy books, but it just wasn't there for me. Like, I read Fourth Wing before I read this, and I loved Fourth Wing, and it lived up to the hype in my opinion. But this, I physically don't understand why it's so hyped up, and I respect that a lot of work has gone into this book and this series. I respect that from an author's standpoint, because I'm an author, hundreds of hours goes into writing, editing, etc. But I really just didn't feel it with this book. I was actually really disappointed. I did not like the ending at all. It was just very unfulfilling, and to be honest, it made me feel annoyed at literally the entire story. I think there was one part in this book that I really liked. It was like a tense sort of sexual tension between the two main characters, and it was a scene in the hallway. It was like a festival that the fairies have, and it was basically Tamlin becomes very beast-like and he gets very spicy, and he finds her in the hallway and they have a very tense moment. It doesn't lead to anything, but they have a very tense moment. I also thought that this was going to be more spicy than it was, and it's really not that spicy at all. I think there was like one very short scene. It wasn't heavily described. From the reviews and the hype, I expected there to be a lot more spice. I gave it 2 chilies, and I thought it was like Tabasco pepper kind of spice, and then overall I gave it 2 stars as well. I know that the majority of people who read this book and read the series absolutely adore it, but I think because it's so hyped, I expected so much more from it, and unfortunately I don't understand the hype. I just didn't get it. Now, moving on to the next book that I read in March. Very different vibes. So the next book I read, which I was very excited for, hugely anticipated, Wildside by Elsie Silver. This book, oh my gosh, it has got to be one of my favourites of hers. Reese, the main male character, has become one of my best book boyfriends, and yeah, I absolutely love this story. It is so good, and Elsie Silver has not let her fans down. I read the physical copy since I pre-ordered it. I actually read most of Elsie Silver's other books on Kindle and then I bought the physical copy, but reading the physical copy of this for the first read, having it in paperback, it just made it feel so much more special than just reading it on Kindle and then buying it. That was a nice little addition to this being such an amazing book. It took me 4 days to read this, which would have been quicker, but I found that there was quite a lot of triggering content in this book, in the sense of the storyline is very similar to a situation that I've been through. I just found that the emotions within the book and the emotions that Tabitha experiences are just so heartbreaking. And with my cat just sneezed. Forgot where I was, sorry, had to let my cat out. So yeah, the emotions that the main female character Tabitha goes through, I felt them so intensely that I honestly had to stop myself from crying and getting very emotional during a lot of the book. It basically follows a woman whose sister passes away and she has to fight for the custody of her nephew, but something happens, I'm not going to give it away. The main male character Reese gets involved, their relationship grows and develops. A lot of her emotions are based around the thought and the feeling of losing her nephew, and I am actually a kinship foster carer and I have my nieces and nephew in care with me, and I've also lost a few of my family. I can't discuss the situation because it's confidentiality, but long story short, I felt so unbelievably connected and I felt I could really relate to her and the emotions that she's feeling, and it all became a little bit too much for me at times, so I had to step away from the book and read something else. But yeah, it took me 4 days. I honestly couldn't stay away from it. It was just so good. I loved it so much. It was definitely entertaining. It was like kind of slow burn and it had very good spice in it, which is a very good thing for me. Elsie Silver usually never lets us down with spice. The humour as well, it had me like physically smiling. I absolutely love the relationship between Reese and Tabby. I think they get on so well, but they clash and they're just so good for each other, and just the way they speak to each other and the things they do are just really amusing and heartwarming, and I just love the way they develop together. I love Reese. He is like dominant and sweet and spicy and grumpy, just all rolled into one, and Tabby is this badass, strong but delicate. Like, she's got this tough exterior but she's actually delicate on the inside. She's so hardworking and raw, and she's just one of my favourite female book characters. She's so awesome and so sensitive and so relatable. Overall, the story has so much depth to it and it really does unleash some really intense emotions in the readers. Despite the ongoing issues and themes in this book, the ending was really lovely. It was realistic. It wasn't like super fantasy fairy tale kind of ending. It was like real, raw, relatable, real person ending, and it was just lovely. I enjoyed it. It was impactful, sweet, and I felt fulfilled after reading this book. I have now read all of Elsie Silver's books, and literally today she's just announced that she's doing an Emerald Lake series. I am so excited. There's another one in this series called Wild Card, and it comes out, I think it's the end of this year, I could be wrong, but I'm really looking forward to that as well. Overall, amazing book. I gave it 5 stars, but I honestly would give it like 5 million, and I gave this 3 chili peppers, and I said it was kind of like habanero spice. So yeah, really awesome book. The next book that I read is actually a graphic novel, and I went to Foyles, the bookstore, on a little day out. I just thought I'd pop by, and I was looking in the young adult section and I found this, and it is so lovely. It's not what I expected, and I love it so much. I cannot wait to buy the next one in the series. So this is The Sad Ghost Club by Lize Meddings, or Lize? I don't know how to pronounce that, so I'm so sorry to the author. This is so unbelievably sweet and it makes such an impact on the reader. Like, personally for me, I just loved it. I related to the themes so much in it, and it made overall the experience of reading it that much better. So this is a young adult graphic novel. There is no spice to it, and it basically follows SG, or Sam, who is a sad ghost. They share with us their experiences, their feelings, and I believe each book, it gives you a different story. It's only a very short story. A lot of relatable content in this about anxiety, feeling alone, depression. So you'd think it would be very sensitive, very triggering, but the way it's handled is so sweet and so lovely, and the author has been so sensitive about these things. So this took me 1 day to read, and I read the physical copy of it. Cute, relatable, entertaining throughout. Very easygoing, easy to read. It's got these lovely sort of graphic novel, comic kind of style reading. I wouldn't exactly say minimal dialogue. It's like it has some of the speech bubbles are quite large, so it's got a lot of depth to it considering it's such a quick read and considering there's a lot of pictures, but it's very effective, and I just didn't expect it, and I really appreciate that. The characters were super relatable, super lovely, dealing with everyday problems that humans face, and problems that we can relate to. Like, I feel like as a teenager, I pretty much went through exactly what this book is about, and now as an adult, I can really relate to this as well. There were only a few characters. It made it seem very intimate and easygoing, and it also helped make the story of the main character more in depth, giving that feeling of loneliness because there weren't many characters at all. So it made it more intimate for the main character and the reader, but it also added to that feeling of loneliness, if you know what I mean. What I really love about this is that, from my perspective anyway, I could be overlooking something, I could have missed something, but I am pretty sure that the characters are gender neutral, and so it's what the reader makes of the character and the dialogue and the way that they are coming across. It could be different for the other ones in the series of this because there are different volumes. This is volume 1, but as far as I'm aware, the main character SG, they don't say whether they are male or female, so it really is up to you. It is as you interpret it, and I just really love that because for me, I feel like that can connect to lots of different readers, whereas you'll find certain genres like romance or horror, they're very, I can guarantee like a lot of the audiences, like majority will be female for romance, majority like, but with this it's so open because the reader literally makes it what it is. It makes it that personalized kind of experience. The story was sweet, sad and straightforward, but it wasn't like super depressing. It was just, again, very relatable, and it was that sort of, it's sad because the characters are going through like anxiety and depression. However, there's this togetherness that comes about, and I can imagine it's going to explore it more in the other volumes, but it just makes you feel whole and complete at the end. It's just so lovely. It's such a great ending, and I can't wait to read the rest of them because of how well the ending was. It's definitely like, the ending is definitely like this little wholesome cliffhanger that leads you straight on. It makes you want to literally buy the next one like immediately after finishing. So yeah, I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. They're so quick and easy to read, and I just cannot wait for the others. The author has done an incredible job, and hats off, honestly. The next book I read is called Famous Last Words by C.W. Farnsworth. I read it on Kindle Unlimited, so I'm going to pop it here, and I read it in about 9 days whilst reading it alongside others. I've never heard of this author, and I've never read any books by them either, but I was so happy that I discovered this. I think I saw a graphic on Pinterest and it made me search the book, and I read it instantly. Even though I've got a long list of books to read, I think if you're a reader, that's basically what you do, isn't it though? Otherwise, are you even a reader? This is a sports romance book, and as an English person, I don't watch hockey. We don't really have hockey in England. I could be wrong. I think there is like a few hockey places, but we don't, it's not like a huge sport that we follow in like England, whereas in like Canada and America, all these books just talk about it, and I'm like living through these books because I want to go to a hockey game. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. It was entertaining throughout, and I love the sports side of it, as I just said. Like literally I adore the hockey romance books. I think Stephanie Archer like started me off with that. As well as the hockey side of it, the main female character in this book, she actually loves swimming, and it really inspired me to start going swimming because her passion and the way it helps her mental health and well-being, it just really struck a chord with me, and I just really enjoy that part of the book. The story has a lot of depth to it, and the character development and the history of both main characters, it really added like reason to their actions and the way that they've been perceived throughout the book, which definitely helps because at the very start of the book, the male main character is seen as not very nice, and some of the characters see his behaviour as very questionable. But as you go along and you learn about his history and things from his perspective, you start to see that actually his actions and the way that he acts have very good reason to them, and it just overall adds to sort of the development and, as a reader, how I saw his character and how I felt and empathised with him as well. The characters were genuinely awesome. I really enjoyed the way that they interact with each other, and I just love the two main characters. I think their relationship's awesome, and they're both kind of in a similar situation where they don't really want a relationship. The family history kind of puts a bit of pressure on this situation, like them as a couple wouldn't work because of XYZ, but it adds even more sort of tension, anticipation. The one thing I will say about this book, it's not very slow burn, and I do wish that it would have had a little bit more anticipation to it, because I'm very much a slow burn romance lover. I love it when it's really held out, and there's a few scenes of tension there, whereas with this they kind of got straight to the spice, but there was spice spread throughout, which I did enjoy. I find that there was quite a bit of relatability to the characters and to their stories, which is really good representation for real life people. I think when you have these relatable stories and the struggles and the experiences, it kind of helps you feel connected to the characters and the story overall. So I think that C.W. Farnsworth did a great job at doing that. I enjoyed the book from beginning to end, truly. There wasn't really any parts that I felt dragged. There wasn't really any parts that I felt weren't good, and the ending was a lovely happily ever after, but it had that relatability aspect to it as well. So it wasn't just something plucked out of a fairy tale. It was like the emotional struggles that the characters face didn't just disappear. They were worked into the growth of the character, and they weren't just dismissed for this happily ever after, which I really love. Like, even upon the ending, it wasn't like everything was wrapped up into a neat bow. It was like, I still feel this way as a character, and this is something that I'm just trying to work on throughout life. It's not just been like, oh yep, everything's fine, relationships are mended, we're all good, happily ever after. And I think that I like the ongoing aspect to that, because it just brings that more sort of human aspect to it. Overall, I did give this book 5 stars. I gave this 3 chili peppers, habanero kind of thing. There were descriptive sex scenes and also smut words, and there was quite a lot of it throughout. I did enjoy it though. Just a little side note as well, I'm not sure if anyone else noticed this, maybe it's just me being very perceptive, but I noticed a lot of typos and errors in the book, and so much so it made me look to see if it was self-published or traditionally published, because when it's a self-published author, I think it's a little bit more forgiving because a lot of them will not go through editors because of the cost. For me, that's the case. My book, Love in Balance, I edited it myself, and so when it's a self-published book, I kind of expect more typos, more errors, because it's just how it is. We're not trained to go through and do that. But this book was actually published through a publisher, and therefore that makes me question why there are so many typos and errors. So yeah, that's just a little side note in there, because I was a little bit confused, because when I say a lot, like there was a lot of typos. So yeah, but overall very good story. The typos didn't take away from the content and the overall book. It's just a little side note that I wanted to add in there, but very good book overall. The last book that I read in March was actually by an indie author who I've become friends with. So this book I read on Kindle Unlimited, and it is called Meet Me at the Metro. It is by Savanna Jade, who is such a lovely person. I'm so glad that I could support her by reading this. So I am aiming to read at least one book by an indie author every month, because as an indie author myself, I know how hard it is. I know how much effort and work we put into things. So I want to put that energy out into the world, help indie authors bit by bit. So this book took me about a week or so to read, just due to stepping away from it during a few triggers. But the author did handle these triggers very sensitively and very well, and it was overall very well written. The book was super entertaining and it kept me hooked throughout, from incredibly written characters to the in-depth backstories, and also the twists and turns. They really did keep me on my feet. It got to a point, like, I was reading it and I was really enjoying it, and then something happened and I was like, what is this now? This added little extra bit in here. And then I kept reading it. I think it was the last night that I read it, because I read this basically whilst I was in bed on my Kindle, and when this one twist happened I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect that. And then it built and built and built, and it became like a thriller, and I was like, I did not expect this to happen. And it added that extra level of excitement, this extra like, oh my gosh, like blood pumping, and yeah. It was like a roller coaster, quite literally, like smiling 1 minute, crying, laughing, like deep sympathy and anxiety and anticipation. But yeah, it was handled so well, and it all added up to become a very awesome story, and one that I just didn't expect. Like, you read the blurb and there's so much more in depth to the book that you never would have imagined by just reading the blurb or judging the book by its cover. The story had incredibly relatable characters with very real life issues, and both of our main characters have faced adversity as well. So it gave a lot of depth and a lot of development with the characters throughout the story as well. It added just that extra layer of connection from reader to the story, to the characters, and also in a way to the author as well. I've always said that when a character faces a real life issue and a real life struggle, or they've faced adversity, it helps me connect so much more with it and with the story. Overall, it makes it a more in-depth experience. Like, you're not just reading the words on paper, you're experiencing the story, you're living through these characters, and connecting with them in that way is beyond. I personally felt so connected and seen by the main character, Theo. He has some really intense struggles. He deals with anxiety and panic attacks throughout the book, and just reading the scenes where he's struggling, it got my heart, because I've been there and I have times like that. And throughout the book you're sort of kept in the dark with Theo's past. Like, it keeps popping up, but it's not revealed until much later. And when it is revealed, it really did get me, because it's so difficult, and the way that Savanna has described the scene, honestly, it's heartbreaking, but she's done it so well. I really love the vibe between the two main characters. I think because it goes from like grumpy main male character and this like bright musical theatre major female character. The way they clash at the very beginning, but then the way that it works out and they end up connecting in so many more ways than just lust and attraction. It's like their souls connect, and the way that they help each other, like it's like a puzzle piece. Like the way that what he's lacking she'll make up for, and vice versa. But also the way that they bounce off each other. I think the rapport that they have is just fantastic. And then speaking of sort of relationships within the book, the two background characters that are introduced almost immediately. So they are Elle's flatmates. They are fantastic, and I cannot wait to read the second book because I know that these characters are going to play a role in it. I really love the way that Savanna has handled the spice within this book. I said that it was done with like elegance, but also a good dose of smut. I love the generous amount that was in there, and it really kept me on my toes throughout the book. Like, there were scenes that I just didn't expect that there would be spice in, but she added it in there, and it was done so well. I really loved it. It was like, there was like tension, but also it was like the fear of being caught, and I think it kind of added to the experience of reading the spicy situations. Despite the amount of spice that was in there and the clear physical attraction and lust that the characters have for one another, I also said that it was clear that there was so much more than just lust between our characters, and there was genuine love and that sort of soul connection in there. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. The ending was really good, it was dramatic, it was fun, it was sweet, it was fulfilling, and it just was a really nice close to the situation and to the struggles that they have faced. It was like a nice way to end the book, and I really enjoyed that. The one thing I will say is, and I did mention this to Savanna, being someone from England and knowing that Savanna is American, the way that Theo's dialogue was written and some of the things that he said, it made me laugh because the way I read his character and the way he speaks reminded me of like an old Cockney geezer from London, and it was just so funny, it was so amusing. But Savanna and I had a little bit of banter about that, and yeah, it's like, it's all good. It actually made the experience of reading it funny and cute and endearing, so it made me love Theo even more. I gave Savanna's book, Meet Me at the Metro, 5 stars. I think it was excellent. I think it was amazingly done, and I gave this 4 chili peppers with habanero spice. It is detailed sex scenes using smutty words, but it makes the book chef's kiss. Fantastic. So those are the books that I read in March. I have read 8 books altogether, and I cannot wait to start more in April, to read more indie authors, support more indie authors, and I suggest you do the same as well. Even if it's just 1 a year, even if it's 2 a year, 1 a month, depending on how much you read, definitely give indie authors a chance because you will not regret it. I can quite easily say that Savanna's book, Meet Me at the Metro, is just as good as the other books that I've read, and she's an indie author, she's self-published, so it just goes to show that if we give indie authors a chance, we can help them grow into these big authors that everyone else is supporting. So thank you so much for watching this video. I am going to hopefully upload every Friday from now on with different book reviews, different book content, and then wrap-ups like I've done for the end of the month. So I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you so much for coming along, and let me know what you've been reading over the last month. Bye!